Hi guys, Happy New Year. It's Wendy with Artfully Created. Today's tutorial, I want to show you how to make your word of the year. Every year I pick a word that I want to embody, and since going to school is my main priority and I don't always have time to be creative, create was going to be my word of the year. And I put it in this cute little frame, which you can change anytime. And you can even do this weekly if you create one of these pieces each week or monthly. Whatever theme you want to do, you can change it up and put it in a nice frame to display on your table or workstation. This is not the best way to show this, but I want to show you how I made mine. I'm sure there's other ways to do it, but this was just what I had on hand. And I don't know if you remember, empower was my last year's word. And I always try to put the date or the year on it so I know when I've used it. And so I wanted to do something a little differently. So what you'll need is some scrapbooking paper, and the frame was 4 by 6, so I just cut 6 by 6 into a 4 by 6. And you can choose to keep the paper big and then trim it down as necessary, or just center your word on there. And what I did, I took some scrap paper cardstock, and all I had was this I guess this red line tape, and I think this was an inch. And so I'm just using this because this is what I have. And it might be easier with that peel and stick tape, but I'm butting the tape as close as possible to each other. So there's hard to see if there's a seam. And I trim these sticky edges off. And if you have junk scissors, use your junk scissors because it kind of gums up your nice scissors. And then I'll just burnish that down. And I am using letter dies. You can use whatever letter dies, or if you have word dies, you can use word dies. These letter dies are from Stamps of Life. I got as they had a flash sale, maybe it was Black Friday, and as soon as I saw that email come through, I jumped on it. So I got the large or the capital letters and the lowercase letters. Here is one I did that was a word die, and that was dream. And then I made peace. And when I was done, I also went around the outside and kind of antiqued it. And then I made this one, and I kept looking at this thinking, okay, there's something wrong, but I could not figure it out. And if you'll notice, the J is actually backwards, so I put this on backwards. So I was going to do another joy, and I won't show you how to cut these out on the Big Shot, but you'll just position it on your magnetic platform or your regular platform. And because this is plastic, this doesn't always cut out. So sometimes you may have to fussy cut the letters out. But just take your time when you're doing it so you don't damage the letters. And I will be right back with that next step. Okay, so I was able to run this through my Big Shot, and I run it through several times just so it has cut the cardstock. And there are pieces that are not fully cut on this plastic covering. And just use your scissors and just go around and cut that plastic. You want to leave that plastic on there until the final step. And a little bit tricky on these little curlicue letters, but I love the result. And just take your time and it will eventually come out. Okay, and then once you get all the letters cut out, just arrange them on the piece of cardstock that you're going to use. And I try to center this. Now, if you are not good at eyeballing these things and you want it to be perfectly aligned, you can use a ruler and calculate it, but I just am not that worried about not being centered. And I'm using a fine tip glue pen. I want to be careful and not have a lot of glue oozing out. So I'm really mindful where I'm putting the glue and trying to use it sparingly, but enough so that it glues down really well. And you also want to make sure you keep, if you're using that red liner tape, that you leave the plastic sticky liner on top until the very end, because you want to keep the stickiness under there for the next step. I don't know if I'm on camera, but just add a little bead of glue. And if you want to be funky like this one, like the Create, I didn't do it all nice and even. And you can, if that's your style. This one I will do evenly. And then the final letter down. And then what I like to do is just stick it under a non-stick mat and burnish it a little bit more. And I use a brayer, so I just burnish it just so those letters are stuck down. And then I'll take a piercing tool to lift up that plastic liner. But this step, you want to be careful not to lift up the different layers of the paper, which is very easy to do. And then since we were butting two ends together, you're going to have two sides to get up. And then this red plastic thing tends to stick to your fingers, so just take your time. See, there's that edge was not glued down enough. And if there happens to be a little edge that's not glued down, what is nice about these little fine tip glue, you can just stick it under there, that little tip, try to glue it down. And I'm using this ready leaf in gold and silver, and you can get this at Michael's. And I was looking for the regular foil, but I don't know if they're no longer selling that regular foil. And this stuff is very thin and it tends to flake off really easily, so just be sure you don't have stickiness on your fingers, or it'll be sticking to your fingers. And that's why you want to be careful when you glue this down, so you don't have glue all over the place, because this will stick to any sticky surface. And then I just lay it down, and then I burnish it with my fingers. And this, when you lift it up, it will lift up as a whole piece. See, a lot of it will try to come up, and you want to save all this excess that didn't attach itself to glue. And then I just stick it back into the container for the next project. And it does fly away. And then if you have a plastic container, use that to put the excess scraps. And so you want to get all this other stuff up. So I will take I don't know, this was some little brush that came in one of my cosmetic things. And I just brush off the excess. And I don't know if you'll notice that in the O, there's a piece that didn't get gold on it. So you really can just pick up a little scrap and then pat it onto the piece that needs to be covered. And then it will be covered. If you don't have one of these little brushes, I even tried one of my cosmetic. It doesn't work as well. This is nice to get some of the finer details. And then just go letter by letter, rubbing the inside and the outside of the letters just to get that excess leafing off. And when it looks nice and how you want it, then you can call it done. But it comes off fairly well if there's no glue. And I'm just getting all these little rough edges that are not stuck. See, a little bit of wind, it just goes flying. And I think that looks pretty good. And then what I do again, I will stick it under my non-stick mat and just burnish it really, really well. And I've also noticed that my cutting plates on my Big Shot, they're well used, and so the leafing will be embossed with the little fine lines. So I think it looks kind of cool the way that it does it. If you don't want it to be bossed, if you want it to be smooth, you might want to use fresh cutting plates, but I really like that look. And I have some foil tape, so I tried it on foil tape, and I have the letters right here. I haven't glued this down on anything yet, but if you've used this before, this stuff is extremely sticky. But I like how that turned out. It cut really quickly and nice, although I wasn't sure, and so I ran it through my Big Shot a couple times, and I did mess up on the S, so I had to cut another S out. So with this, while it is sticky, it's a paperback and then a foil, so it does cut nicely with your thinlet dies. And so just running it once, maybe twice, would be fine. I don't know if you can notice, but the S is a little bigger and fatter than the rest of the letters. My S had moved in the machine, so it just really cut up the S. But that's an alternative if you have the foil tape. And what I also did was took some ink and went around the edges here with a dye-based ink. And this was a Stamp It Up, so this was the crumb cake. So what I could use is the crumb cake ink and just go around the edges. I don't know if I have. Let's see. Oh, well, this is not the right color, but just take a sponge and just go around the outside. Now you don't have to do this. I just thought it made it a little bit interesting. You can do as little or a lot depending on your style. So let's see which one this is. So this is 2016 Word of the Year, Create. So I'd love to hear what your word of the year is. Just leave me a message down below. If you make anything, join my Facebook group, Artfully Created, and share your pictures. I would love to see what you're doing. If you have any questions, let me know. Thanks for watching. Have a great year. Bye-bye, guys.